Is it too loud? Now it's better, is it? Okay, better. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukham Karati Vachalam Pangum Langati Girim Yat Kripatamaham Bhande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. As I travel, I speak, and I'm sometimes spoken to, and I read, and I hear, and different thoughts sometimes formulate, and sometimes I get what I consider good ideas in terms of presentations in lectures, and then I write them down. I make notes and I write them down. And then sometimes, especially if I'm in a rush, because sometimes I can speak even, there were times when I spoke like 5 times a day, you just don't have time to prepare a talk. Then I look at my notes. And so once it happened that on the way to this one city, in the car, I had some thoughts and I noted them down. And that was the presentation, the lecture that I was to give. And then I came there and I spoke according to my notes. And then 1 year went by. And then within a year, I was again in the same city. And I was thinking, and I was in a real rush, I was really rushed there. And I was thinking, what should I speak on? And then I remembered the notes, but the very same notes that I used to give a lecture there, but I forgot that that was the lecture I gave at that place. So after 1 year, I gave the same lecture at the same place to the same audience, and no one noticed. And then the funny thing was that during the questions and answers session, same person asked the same question. And he couldn't remember it.
Bhagavatam repeated. He gave a different answer, Maharaj.
No, that's when I told him that he asked the same question year before. Oh, Krishna.
But we remember your lectures, Maharaj.
What's that?
We remember your lectures.
Well, on the way here, I remembered something that I heard from Vaisheshika Prabhu. And that stuck with me. And then after that, I actually went into the database and I couldn't find it. So I went online and I found that what he said was true, that one of our Vaishnavacharyas described one section of the Srimad Bhagavatam to describe Krishna Bhakti, the process of devotional service mixed in the three modes of material nature, given through three stories in the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam. Now, I spoke about this in different places at different times, but on the way here I actually composed some notes. I don't think I spoke this before here. So the three stories are given in more than 3 chapters in the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam, and they come in succession. The first story describes devotional service or a devotee in the mode of ignorance. And then the second story, the very following story, describes devotional service or a devotee or devotees in the mode of passion. And then the third story describes a devotee in the mode of goodness as he performs devotional service in the mode of goodness. Now, of course, this is slightly different from the very same topic in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, where Lord Kapiladev describes devotional service in 3 modes, in the sense that here, devotional service in the mode of goodness is described as completely pure. So I shall try to briefly, there's no clock here, so I'm not sure what the time is. So
Can you see that one?
No. Oh yeah. It's a little bit blurry. It's kind of far. Actually, I have a phone, so I can put it here. And what's the time allocated for this session? Till 7:15. Okay. So the first story is the story of Daksha. And how many of you have read fourth canto of the Bhagavatam? Few, okay. How many of you are planning to read the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam? Very well. Okay, so in the... do you mind sitting respectfully? You're a clean, intelligent, good-looking person. Yeah. Don't be like one of these modern kids. Once I was hosted at a university in San Diego to speak, I was shocked to see students sitting and their legs up on the feet, up on the chair in front, doing a lecture as it's anyhow. Modern times, artificial equality. Anyone can do anything they want to, but there is culture also, and the culture has a purpose. So the first story is story of Daksha. If you may know or may not know, but Daksha was a very powerful personality. So qualified, we could hardly find anyone as qualified. Learned, educated, fine, cultured person, tremendously smart, educated in Vedic knowledge, charitable, compassionate, just a fantastic person. one of the topmost universal managers, directly ordered by Krishna to do certain things in service to Krishna. Actually, Narayana, doesn't matter, but within this universe. So, not an ordinary person, not even extraordinary, more than an extraordinary person. So, very qualified person. I'm not sure if we have that kind of level of managers in ISKCON of Sacramento. Or for that matter, maybe nowhere in the ISKCON world. Very, very qualified personality. And so, especially in those days, people used to perform yagyas as a means to satisfy Vishnu, as a means to satisfy society, as a means to promote well-being of everyone. All around, it was social life was all centered around yagyas. Yagya was the thing. It was all in all. And so Daksha, as a powerful personality, as a respectable person in a society, he performed many of these yagyas. And so once while a yagya was performed, he entered the assembly. As he entered the assembly, everyone stood up to demigods, different devas that were there, everyone stood up to offer respect to this person who has just entered the arena. You can imagine. He was not a demigod. He was a human being, but it was so powerful, so elevated, that when he entered this arena, demigods were standing up to offer respects. Everyone except Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And so he noticed that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva did not stand up, and of course it was no problem that Lord Brahma did not stand up. For him that was no problem, because after all Lord Brahma is the ultimate universal manager. But he was really bothered that Lord Shiva did not stand up. And so what's interesting in this instance, this was his line of reasoning. When he finally took his seat, then he spoke the following. He was about to greatly offend Lord Shiva, criticize him. And he said, "I do not speak out of ignorance or envy." And then he proceeded to speak out of ignorance and envy. Hey, I hope you recognize yourself here. We do it all the time. I love you, I don't hate you, and then then we unleash the hell. I don't envy you, and then we envy completely. I could totally recognize myself when I've seen myself do this God knows how many times. I do not speak out of ignorance or envy, and it's so obvious. He was ignorant and envious. And so what bothered him was that Lord Shiva did not stand up. But why? Because he considered Lord Shiva inferior to him. Why inferior? Because Lord Shiva married his own daughter. And because he married his own daughter means that he was his son-in-law. Now, son is not superior to the father. Son is inferior to the father, including the son-in-law. And so he considered Lord Shiva to be inferior. And he's right. He is right. Son-in-law is inferior to the father. However, that is just one aspect. What about other aspects? That Lord Shiva is, by the very category, by the very nature of his existence, Lord Shiva is more elevated than Lord Brahma. As a matter of fact, the only person who's more elevated, more high situated than Lord Shiva is only God. So there is God, there is Krishna, Vishnu, Lord Narayana. Then comes Lord Shiva, then everyone else. Some or other Daksha forgot all of that. He just remembered that he's his son-in-law. And this is typical of people who are influenced by the mode of ignorance. They see one thing or a few things and don't see other things. So they just focus on this one thing, and this one thing in their mind starts to grow and grow and grow and become bigger and bigger and more important and loud and tumultuous that they can't perceive and think or hear of anything else. You just become aware of this one thing. And in this way, you forget everything else. Even things which are more important than this one thing. This is the influence of the mode of ignorance. And so Daksha could not remember anything else except this one element. And he was so disturbed by it that while everyone else, it's not only that everyone stood up and glorified Daksha when he stood up and offered respects to Daksha, but they also uttered these glories. They celebrated this person with words, etc., etc. But he couldn't hear a thing. All he was able to be aware of was the fact that his son-in-law did not stand up. This is the mode of ignorance, when the mind, when our consciousness becomes so narrow and we focus on one thing which is not even the most important thing. Or even if it's an important thing, but it's still just one thing, or a few things, but there are so many other things. Is Daksha a devotee? Yes. Is he a great devotee? Yes. Was he covered by the mode of ignorance?
Yes.
Yes. Interesting. See if it can happen to Daksha. It probably can happen to us.
Probably.
Yes, we get covered over regularly, on regular basis, religiously. And so he went offending Lord Shiva and cursing, and eventually even cursed Lord Shiva. That he should never be offered, he should not be, he doesn't deserve, he should not be offered part in the Yagya Shishta. What's the English term?
Oblations.
Oblations, okay. And so then, what happened then? Now it's an interesting thing. But the interesting thing is, when the mode of ignorance manifests, it is contagious. And so as one person becomes contaminated by the mode of ignorance, other people get pulled in too.
Wow.
And then becomes a brawl. And so what happened was next, then Nandishvara lost his composure. And then he started to curse Daksha. And then he started to curse Brahmanas around. Then he started to curse everyone. And then the Brahmanas from the side of Daksha started to curse not only Nandishvara, but all of Lord Shiva's followers, who did not say a thing. Only Nandishvara said something. But these Brahmanas, these were the priests of the demigods. And everything started with one person being ignorant. And then another, and then a storm. And everyone got cursed, left and right. First Daksha curses Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva, nothing. He's calm. He's calm and composed. So Daksha curses Lord Shiva. Then Nandishvara curses Brahmana, all the priests there. who did not say a word, but he curses all of them. And then the Brahmanas curse all of Lord Shiva's followers. This is how it escalates. Mode of ignorance. That's why there's that story of Bhrigu Muni. You probably all know. Testing who's the greatest devotee, or who's the greatest deity. And Lord Vishnu was great, and right, he went and he kicked Lord Vishnu. But Lord Vishnu did not become angry, upset or anything. As a matter of fact, he asked, "Oh, my dear Brahmana, my chest is so hard, I hope you didn't hurt your foot." So the point here is not that we should practice necessarily absolute philosophy or turn the other cheek, but the point here is that a greatly elevated person is a person who can resist the urge of the lower modes. And Lord Vishnu, being completely above the modes, he could, there was nothing for him to resist to, because modes cannot approach Lord Vishnu. Whereas over here we see in the arena of Daksha, they are all losing their cool. They're all starting to curse left and right. And then, when this happened, then Lord Shiva's followers wanted to fight. Now it's getting physical. And they were about to attack everyone in the arena. Was it Bhrigu who presided? I think it was Bhrigu Muni who then created these ribus, creatures who then attacked Lord Shiva's followers, and they scattered them off. And that was the end of the story. That was not quite the end, unfortunately. That was just the beginning. That was just the beginning. And so, according to the Bhagavatam, thousands of years went by. And for thousands of years, Daksha held a grudge. For thousands of years, he held a grudge. He couldn't forget this. To the point when in one point Daksha was performing a sacrifice, and sacrifice being, among other things, a social event, Sati, Daksha's daughter, Lord Shiva's eternal consort, wife, she saw all these beautiful demigods being dressed finely in demigoddesses, going somewhere. So she asked what was going on, attracted to social life. See, even Sati is attracted to social life. She inquired what was going on. She found out that there was a big ceremony going on at Daksha's, her father's place. She wanted to go. She asked Lord Shiva for blessings that she may go there, and Lord Shiva told her, "Don't go, because your father's still holding a grudge against me. And because you're my wife, he's going to be unkind to you." But she couldn't resist going, because everyone else was going. She wanted to see friends, she wanted to look pretty. Women like to look pretty in a public assembly. And she wanted to go. And she went. Lord Shiva didn't think it was a good idea, but she went anyways. And she went there, and no one showed her respect. Her father completely ignored her. The only persons who offered the respect was her mother and her sisters. But now she was so afflicted. It really hurts when someone who you expect some affection from don't give it. Very, very painful situation. So in this pain, she could not hear the pleasing words of her mother or her sisters. And she just went immediately in front of Daksha and angrily spoke to him. And she was quite disgusted with her own body. Why with her own body? Because it belonged to her father. It came to her through her father. So you can imagine so much anger that if your daughter comes before you and tells, this is your body, I don't want it, and she commits suicide. With the yogic power, she incinerates her body. To cut the story short, this resulted in all kinds of trouble. And there was a big fight. Lord Shiva eventually sent his... actually, I made a little mistake. This is when the Ribhus were created, and this is where Lord Shiva's followers were scattered, because they followed Sati there. And then they went back to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva plucked the hair out of his head, electrified hair, it says in the Bhagavatam, created a monster, Virabhadra, and sent there to kill Daksha, which Virabhadra did. And they destroyed the whole sacrifice, killed, destroyed, plucked eyes, broke bones, destroyed furniture, arena, everything. Beat up brahmanas, knocked teeth out of people's mouths. It was a bloody scene. And so then cut off Daksha's head. Horrible mess. And so then whoever was left standing after the massacre, they went to Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu to ask for help. And then all together they went to Lord Shiva to apologize to Lord Shiva. And then Lord Brahma offered prayers to Lord Shiva, explaining in his prayers, as he was addressing Lord Shiva, he made it obvious to everyone what is the position of Lord Shiva. And so finally appeasing Lord Shiva, I was actually peacefully meditating there, now without his eternal consort. He agreed to rectify the situation and brought Daksha back to life, and Daksha apologized and this, that, the other thing. And what's interesting, Daksha was then given back his service, which shows the magnanimous nature of Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma. Typically, in our society, if someone was to make such a horrible mistake, they would never be allowed to be temple president again. But Daksha was a seriously elevated person who somehow or other was swallowed by ignorance. And this one thing really led him far off. And what's interesting, sometime later he's going to do a very similar thing with other people, doesn't matter now. But so this is given as an example of the devotional service in the mode of ignorance. So he was serving Krishna, he was serving Lord Vishnu. The service was given to him by Lord Vishnu. He was a universal manager. And whatever he was doing was in service. But because of being influenced by the mode of ignorance in one point, he created a lot of mess. And then after he was influenced and other people allowed themselves to be influenced by the mode of ignorance, and things went really, as they say, south. Meaning went really bad. Now the next story is the story of Prince Dhruva. And I'll really cut this one short. Dhruva is described as a person who performed devotional service but in the mode of passion. Why in the mode of passion? First of all, Dhruva means very determined, fixed, firm. That's what Dhruva means. And the difference between Dhruva and a typical materialist, Dhruva had a material desire to fulfill. He had a serious material desire to fulfill. He was offended, which is sort of mode of ignorance, but he had a great material desire. He wanted to be the most prominent person with the greatest property, greatest real estate in the world. Why? So that he could dominate his father, because he was offended by his stepmother. Details don't matter so much. But he had this material desire that he wanted this position. Is this devotional service? No. Is this meant to please Lord Vishnu? No. Did he want it? Yes. Did he want it strongly? Yes. But one difference between Dhruva and a typical materialist who wants just material achievements or mundane achievements is that Dhruva was so serious that he really, really wanted to fix his problem. So anyone who really ultimately wants to fix their problem, they're going to become devotees. And this is what happened to Dhruva. He met Narada Muni. Narada Muni told him to give up his anger, but Dhruva told him that he was incapable of doing that. He was stronger than him. He was being honest, and that was so. So Narada Muni engaged him in worship of Lord Narayana. For what? For a material cause. But he was really determined to do this right and do it all the way. And because of this, and because he followed the instructions of Narada Muni, he actually became a pure devotee. But still his devotional service was in the mode of passion, because he had some motives beside pleasing Lord Krishna. He wanted something, wanted a position, wanted things done his own way. That's very often the mode of passion. It has to be done my way. Mode of passion is also blinding, like the mode of ignorance, just in a different way. Too much self-confidence, thinking that the person must be right. So what's interesting, both of these stories, that Daksha and Dhruva became decent devotees, but they had gone through some trouble. They have gone through some trouble. And then we have the third story that follows, that illustrates service or existence in the mode of goodness. And here we have the story of
Prahlad.
No, it's in the fourth canto. Prithu, King Prithu, very well. You get extra plate of Mahaprasadam afterwards. King Prithu. Why King Prithu? Very interesting situation, something to really, really think about. King Prithu was advised to do the Ashwamedha Yagyas and to do 100 of them. Why? So that, because he had a service, and his service was to lead the universe. But in order to do that, he was advised to be well established in his position, that he has some adhikar or qualification. Like, for example, Kshatriyas, by their dharma, they have to be strong and opulent. That's one of the reasons why Rajas live in opulence, so they dominate in every respect. So similarly, if you're going to be the leader of the universe, you have to have some piety behind you to dominate. In other words, to obviously be a leader. And so he was advised to do, even though he didn't have to do this, because Prithu was actually an incarnation of Krishna. So he was advised to perform these sacrifices, Ashwamedha Yagyas, to really establish his position as the topmost. And so he went to perform these sacrifices, and he performed 99 of them, and he had just one to go. Very complicated thing, a lot of technicalities, a lot of wealth, so much involved, so much to be done. And so he did 99 of them, which is unheard of. Hardly anyone does even one or two, let alone 99. And so he had one to go. And as he was doing the 100th one, Lord Indra became a little concerned. This person's becoming more popular and more famous and more powerful than me. And so he thought he should prevent him from completing the 100th sacrifice. And so every time they would bring the sacrificial horse, Indra would steal it. And he stole it once and twice and 3 times. I don't know how many times he stole it. I'm not sure if it's even mentioned in the Bhagavatam, but multiple times he stole the horse. And he would dress up as one person, then another person in this garden would steal this horse. And in one point, King Prithu had enough of it. He says, that's it, now I'm going to punish you. And he pursued Lord Indra. It was so powerful. He actually chased down Lord Indra and he was about to kill him, execute him. And then he was approached, I think it was Lord Brahma that approached him and asked him, please don't do that. Please don't do that. And please, and this is really far out, and please don't do the 100th sacrifice. Why? Because obviously this guy, we shouldn't call him a guy, but Lord Indra, obviously he has an issue with your 100th sacrifice. Where I grew up, there is a saying that the smart relents. Smart relents. And my mother used to tell me and my sister, because we would butt heads all the time as kids, and no one would give up. She would think she was right and I demanded that I was right, and we just wouldn't let go. And the mother would come and she would say this ages-old saying, well, the smart relents. Who wants to be smart? None. Not giving up. It's interesting when you drive by a school. I was once in Santee. Santee is way out of San Diego, some 40-minute drive out of San Diego. And there was a school, elementary school in Santee, and it had very high walls all around the perimeters of the school. And then, so the school was on one side, and then on the other side of this wall was a sidewalk, and then there was the street in which cars drove. And there was a sign, school zone, speed limit 15 miles, 15, I think it's 15, right? 25, school zone, 25 miles an hour. Speed limit. And I'm thinking, how does this make any sense? Like kids are on the other side of this big wall, and then there's a sidewalk, and there's a street here. And even if there wasn't a wall, I mean, kids should be smart. Why should they be running into the street where the cars drive? But the thing is that kids are not intelligent. Forgive me. Their intelligence gets covered over by absorption in play and etc., etc. So they're not most attentive of the creatures on this planet. And they tend to do stupid things. And so therefore adults should know better. You cannot expect from a child to tolerate an adult, but you have to expect from an adult to tolerate the child. What kind of a parent is a parent that beats the child because the child just refuses to understand something? He cannot understand. That is the problem. So similarly, when you have people who are disagreeing like this, what it takes is the smart to relent. Someone has to be an adult. And if you don't have any adults, you just have war, like me and my sister. Endless war until we grew up. There was nothing father and mother could do. Even if they